Okay, I don't know what's happening, but I think universes are colliding. Look what I found in the store today. Heinz baked beans, British style. Something going on here. I know what I'm having for lunch today. Hi everybody. Now if you're a regular visitor to my channel and watched a lot of my videos, you may have noticed that lately I've been doing quite a bit of time-lapse. And the reason being is I've always been quite interested in time-lapse, but I've never really delved into it very much. So for the past, I don't know, several months, I've kind of accumulated some equipment and I'm starting to get right into it. Now, even though I really enjoy time-lapse, I'm not one of these guys that love to see 10 minutes of time-lapse, just like I'm not really that interested in watching 10 minutes of drone footage or the same footage over and over again. I find that what happens is I get quite bored really quickly. So the reason why I've got into time-lapse is I just wanted to add another dimension into my videos, make them a little bit more interesting, rather than me just sitting here talking all the time. I've got a bit of time-lapse, a bit of drone footage, some photographs. But of course, the problem with all that is it takes quite a bit of effort to carry all this stuff. Now, if you watched my last video, and if you haven't, I'll put a link up here. You may have noticed that I had a rail and a 3-axis head. Now, I just recently purchased the head and the rail, and to be honest with you, I mean, as neat as the footage is, it's just a pain in the butt to carry. The biggest problem is weight. The whole unit probably weighs about 20 pounds or so. So right now, like in my backpack here, it looks quite small, but the weight is pretty dense. So I'm carrying about 60, 70 pounds, which is just not great if you're hiking long distances. So I'm pretty much limiting my time-lapse to areas that I can walk to easily from the car or a boat or whatever. I'll say right off the bat, I am by no means an expert in time-lapse. I'm just getting into it myself. Now this is Englishman River Falls. You may recall that I was here back in February, and actually I quite like it this time of year better than earlier. There's less water, but you get more individual waterfalls rather than just a big mass of water coming over the falls here. So I'm going to practice a few time-lapse maneuvers, if you want to call them that. Now, when I was looking for gear to buy, there was a number of things that I wanted to include. Now, there are a number of different units out there that you can purchase. The 3 top ones that come to mind are the Eldacron, the Dynamic Perceptions unit, and the one I have, the EMOTIMO. Now there are others as well, but I wanted a 3-axis, and with the rail it'd be a 4-axis. But the reason why I got the EMOTIMO over the, say, the Dynamic Perception is that I can also use this for video. It's great for doing automated video moves as well. Right now I really enjoy setting it up and looking for compositions and looking for ways that I can, you know, just make my videos just a little bit more interesting and a little bit more exciting, to be honest with you. Right, I found some beautiful rocks down here and behind me, so I'm going to set up a whole bunch of different time-lapse, and then I'll just go through all of them with you, and then if I have time, I'll show you how I make those individual images into time-lapse. It's quite easy actually. All right. Okay, so these are all the components that I'm carrying for this this slider. Now I have an extra ball head. Now this, I must admit, this is a bit overkill. This is a BH1, I think, from Kirk Enterprises. It's pretty heavy, but I didn't want to go out and buy another ball head. I already have 3 or 4, so I've been using this one. It's pretty heavy duty. And okay, so we have all of the cords here for the various different components. This is the main component here. This unit here is made by EMOTIMO, and it's called the ST4, and as you can see, it's pretty darn heavy. This thing here strapped or taped to the side is actually a battery. So this battery powers not only the head here, but also the motor for the slider, which I'll show you in a minute. So that's the head. Let's put that over there. And this here is the motor, which is quite heavy again, for the slider. And this unit here, this is actually a Sony PlayStation control unit for gaming. This controls the EMOTIMO ST4 head. Now you don't actually need this. It actually has a joystick on the head, so you don't have to carry this if you don't want to. And okay, now there's an L bracket. I need this if I'm going to use the focus unit, which I have here. This is actually if you want to change the focus on your camera automatically. And then there's some other just bits and pieces in here. 2 different belts for different size sliders. And then you need Allen keys, and I mean the list goes on and on. Lots of little bits and pieces that are very easy to lose. And cords for your camera, and also to hook up the battery. All right, now the light isn't being terribly cooperative this afternoon, as usual. When I first got here, it was quite cloudy and just a little bit of blue sky, but now there seems to be more blue sky than clouds. So the time lapse that I just took, I had a bit of a problem with it because the waterfall kept coming in and out of shade, so it'd have bright spots on it. It might look quite good with a time lapse, but I'm not quite sure. Depends if the highlights are blown out or not. So what I'm doing now is I've set up the rail again, and I'm looking the other way towards this fallen tree here, or log, and there's a couple of little cascades on the side here. It's actually really nice, and I might take a pano after. Yeah, it's a nice little scene. Beautiful afternoon, not that many people here today, so it's a really good time to come. Right, I'll finish this time lapse and then take a couple of images. Okay, now I've just spent the last few days back and forth between doing odd jobs on our cottage and going to Englishman River Falls to try and get as much time lapse as I can. I should have mentioned earlier, like time lapse, you don't have to go out and buy all of this this equipment to do time lapse. Most cameras and cell phones now come with apps where you can do in-camera time lapse without having to process anything. But there are two different ways you can do it. You can either let the camera do it, or you can take a whole series of photographs, process them, and then turn them into a time lapse. And the advantage to that is that you have more control over the images and how they look in the final time lapse. So I'm just going to go over really quickly how I would go about processing those images. There's a whole bunch of different programs out there that'll do it for you. There's two that I primarily use, and that's Photoshop and Final Cut Pro. You can process images in Lightroom, and I think if you download one of the modules and work on the images in the slide module or the slideshow module, you can make time lapse in that. But I haven't really tried that, so I'm just going to go over Final Cut Pro because that just seems to be the easiest. Oh, and before I start on that, I should say that what I usually do is I download all of the raw files into one folder, and then I'll bring them into Lightroom, work on them a little bit in Lightroom, because the nice thing about Lightroom is you can work on one image and then just copy all of those things that you've done on that image onto all the other images, and then I convert them to JPEGs and then bring them into Final Cut Pro. And the part that takes probably the longest, depending on how powerful your computer is the actual processing of the raw files into JPEGs. With this laptop, it takes quite a while. It could take about half an hour to do maybe 400 images or so. But it's a great time just to go and have a cup of tea. Right, I'll just show you how I quickly do the time lapse in Final Cut Pro then. Okay, I've opened up Final Cut Pro and I've started a new project. And the first thing I would do is just import all of those JPEGs. So we'll just scroll down to where I've saved the files, time-lapse 9, and we just import all of those JPEGs. Okay, now I have all of the files, as you can see here. And what I'm going to do first is just select all of them. So just click on the top one, scroll the way down to the bottom, Shift and click, and just drag those into my timeline. Okay, so the first thing I do is make sure that all of the static images are all selected at the bottom here. You can see by the yellow outline on them. Now we need to change the timing of these. So Control D and then press 1, enter or return, and that'll change the timing. See, now you see that it's 18 seconds long and not 1 hour. Okay, and now you can see that we have a pretty decent looking time-lapse movie. From there I would just go Option G, and that would make it into a compound clip or just one clip. So I'm just going to rename this to Englishman 10. That's my 10th time-lapse. Okay. And you can see now that that is all one clip. And if we go right to the beginning here and go on the full screen, you can see there we have full time-lapse. Now you'll notice that the dimensions of the time-lapse aren't 16 by 9. I haven't cropped this. Usually what I do is just leave it at the dimensions of what the camera has given me, and then if I want to crop it for the movie or not, then at least I have that option. Anyway, it's pretty simple to do in Final Cut Pro. The longest part, again, is just converting the raw files into JPEG files. And you can see that you can scrub through to any part that you want to. And that's it. Now, I have processed these time lapse, and I'm still having a little bit of a problem with the jitters. The footage seems to be quite smooth, and then there'll be a jerky bit, and there's a whole number of things that could be happening there. But what I suspect is happening is that because I have it on 2 tripods, and pretty much all of the footage that I took was in moving water, the whole rig is moving slightly during the time-lapse sequence, so that's probably why it's doing that. Right, that's it for my basic time-lapse tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please be sure to give me a thumbs up if you did, and as always, again, if you enjoy the content of my channel, be sure to subscribe. All right, everybody, thanks ever so much, and I'll catch you next time. All right, thanks.